Mr. Danielson will be filming us today. So thank you for being here, Bruce.
As most of you know, Pat Starr has been involved in Democratic politics for quite a while and ran for city council last time and was elected and has been very active, and I think most of us will agree has been a very good voice for the people of Sioux Falls. And he's here to fill you in what's going on down the road.
See if I can make this work. The mayor did give us his recommended budget this week, so I brought a copy and thought maybe we'd go through page by page and see how we do. But a big part of what I try to do when I do these is to get a chance to hear from you and know what you're interested in. But I put a couple of things together that I wanted to hit highlights of what have been in the news. And again, one of the other things that I like to do when I get out and be amongst friends and people who are fellow Democrats is get a chance to maybe give you something that you haven't heard in the news so that you can say, hey, I heard about that last week from Councilman Starr, and he'll give you a chance to know a little bit. So I might just jump right into that, and we'll do some questions at the end because I want to spend as much time listening as I do talking, as I try to tell my 3 kids now, though. For those of you that don't know or have known me for a while, I have 2 adopted children. I have Avery's a 15-year-old who is going to be a sophomore at O'Gorman, and that kills me being a Yankton buck every time he puts that O'Gorman shirt on. It's like a dagger in the heart. And last time I gave him a bad time about it, he told me, deal with it, Dad. So he's a typical teenager by the time we're done. I also have a daughter, Angela, who is going to be a 4th grader at St. Lambert's. She runs the house. She's definitely the woman of the house and knows what's going on. If I need to know someone's name or what's going on in the world, I'm like, Angela, who is that, or who do they belong to? And she's like, oh, that's Jill Smith, and her mom's this, and Dad works here. And I take her door to door with me and meeting people, and she's like, Dad, we got to go. It's been 3 minutes. That's all you get. You can't keep talking. And you know what it's like when you knock on doors. If you get somebody to actually answer the door and want to engage and want to talk about something and share issues, and she's like, nope, come on, Dad, we got to go. So she's been awesome. But back in January, and I love sharing this story, my wife of 27 years, Emily, talked me into becoming foster parent. So we started the foster care process and went through the training, and as usual, and I didn't know this at the beginning, there was an ulterior plan. She is a nurse at Children's Home Society, and she had fallen in love with this little 5-year-old girl who needs a home and needed a place to live. And so Alinea joined us here about 2 months ago, and she's going to be a kindergartner. And the 2 personalities between the 9-year-old and the 5-year-old of who's in charge are struggling a little bit. Mom and Dad are trying to figure out who's exactly in charge. So we've just been so excited about the foster care process and being part of that. And the other thing that happened on the side, we took Alinea for an appointment, and one of the adoption coordinators saw us in the hallway and said, you guys are licensed for foster care now, so can we put you on the backup list if a mom delivers and we need a place for a newborn for a couple of days? Oh, how much work can it be a newborn be? So 3 weeks ago, we added a newborn right from the hospital to the family, and the 2 little girls have been fighting over him, and he has now gone to his forever family. It was the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life, and even the birth of my own children, we were there at the beginning for both kids at the hospital. They were both a couple hours old when we adopted them. But watching this, and it was the most amazing thing to see. Here's this couple that are in their late 30s. They've never been able to have children. Their new babies ready to present. So, of course, my 5-year-old, my 9-year-old, my wife, everybody's got to say goodbye to the baby because we're bonded after 2 weeks of him being with us. A couple of days that turned into 2 weeks. But to watch, and this new mom, she's swelling up with pride and excitement, and that's my baby. But my 5-year-old's got the baby. And now my wife's got the baby. And now my 9-year-old's got the baby. I've been up with him all night. I'm done with him. Grandma went home a day or 2 before he went to his forever family. But Mom's swelling up, so my wife's got the baby, and she's saying goodbye to this beautiful little bundle of joy, who's been up all night and not so beautiful to me at this point. And finally, I look over and I go, you better give that baby up now. It's time. There's these forever family is excited to see him. And then, like I said, they're trying to be really cool that they're not excited, you know, that this is the greatest thing that's happened to them. So my wife hands the baby to the dad because he's kind of in the, you know, closest to her, so she's doing it. So dad's got this baby and he's just turning red and excited to have his baby. And I look over and I'm finally, after a couple minutes, and I look over at him and I go, dude, I've been married 27 years. If you don't hand that baby over to her right now, we're all in trouble. None of us are leaving this room. It's just kind of like, yep, it is. So anyway, we've added we'd love to do it again, but not anytime soon. We're still recovering to catch up on our sleep that he's been gone a couple of weeks. So like I said, I wanted to touch on a few things that are in the news, but I want to start at least with something that you probably haven't heard a lot about. One of the things that we do as a city is we do a lot of partnership agreements with the county. And we act in public, it seems like, that we don't do much with the county, but we share the Pettigrew Home and the Old Courthouse Museum. We do a lot of projects that are in coordination. We share employees that take care of some of these things. And one of the things that's been in the news in the past, and it hasn't been much lately, is the new archives building. The Old Courthouse Museum is full of collection. The third and fourth floor and the attic and basement and every place that they can shove part of the collection, they've done it. And a couple of years ago, the two groups came together between the city and county and said, we need to do that. And then we have a generous gift of some land and then some more land to sell. So the land has been sold to Sanford. The land where the collection building is going to be placed is out at just north of the Huther Family Tennis Center. And like I said, the land's been sold. The plans are put together for the building. And we went to bid here a week ago, and the bids were opened on Wednesday. And it's the first time I've ever seen this, but the bids there were 8 construction companies that bid on the building, and they all came in under our budget. So the project is going to be able to move forward. We're meeting as a joint group between the county commission and the city council on Tuesday to move forward, and we'll start breaking ground really soon. Probably by the time we get contracts negotiated and get a chance to do that. That'll make the news next week, and so now you have the little bit of heads up, and if you are nerdy like I am and want to dig in a little bit more to that during the question and answer period, I'd be glad to share some more and dig. But the bottom line is the mayor put the $1.3 million commitment from the city into the building, so that is in his budget for 2018. The county actually has cash set aside for $1.3 million for their share of it. The land sold for about 1.4, and the total project is about 3.7, 3.8 million. So by the time we add everything, we're going to have a beautiful building, and we'll probably get a chance to get stuff out of that building before, I hate saying the word collapse, or buildings, there's literally that much weight, and a structural engineer comes into the old courthouse every year to make sure that they adjust things, and it's varying the load, but the sooner that stuff gets out of there, and then what it'll allow us to do, remember I just said a minute ago I wasn't going to dig any deeper into this, but you'll be able to use and have access to the collection. Everything's categorized, and it's on the computer now. You can do searches, but finding it and getting to it and having access to that information, whether it's family records or whatever kind of research you're doing, you're going to have a place in this archives building to be able to have access to that information and get a chance to use it and be part of it. So, like I said, I think it's really exciting. It's been a little controversial. The city administration hasn't been excited, and they took it out of the budget. And we've gone back and forth, and we're moving forward with the archives building. So I think that's an exciting thing. And we've had some generous donors help us with that. The other thing that you've seen in the paper, and I want to spend a little bit of time telling you a little bit about, when I got elected to the council, one of the first things that we did, there were 4 new council members out of 8 that got elected last April. So a lot of newbies and a lot of time, and a lot of people with some things that need to change, and we need to open things up, and we need to have a chance. One of the things we did, or I asked for right away, is looking at the number of nonprofit groups that we support as a city. right away the budget hearings start. Wanted to take a look. You know, we make a significant contribution to the Bishop Dudley House, to see, now I lost them all. But we don't give any money to the banquet, which surprises me. There isn't a lot of city money that has gone there. Mayor Munson during his time.
Government money.
No, there isn't, and that's, thank you. And that's why I knew the banquet. They were saying the banquet was one of them, and I said that we don't give the banquet. But anyway, so we did a lot of tours and took a look around what was going on, what we were funding. We did a tour of the wastewater facility in July. Don't recommend that. You know, if you want to go to the wastewater facility, actually, Mr. Danielson went along and filmed that trip, and it wasn't horrible, but the freshwater facility is a lot more fun during the summer. I highly recommend the wastewater facility later in the fall. I think it goes off.
There's some
So just trying
fragrance
to,
there.
exactly, trying to get a lot of our feet under us of what's going on, what the city's doing, meeting city employees, trying to find departments. And one of the things that someone had mentioned to me, I noticed, was looking around the Whittier neighborhood, which is one of the areas that I represent as part of representing the northeast part of town, and trying to find permanent housing for people who have a criminal record is very difficult in this town. But it's difficult across the country. We can find jobs, which surprises me. We even put people that have criminal records behind the cash registers because we put them in cameras and they have a chance to count money. So, I mean, they're able to be employed in the economy that we have in Sioux Falls. And what we see is a lot of people at the Bishop Dudley, they get the help they need, they move in the right place, but finding a place for them to live is really difficult. And so then what we see is people reoffend, we arrest them, put them in the county jail, that puts a burden on the county, they end up back in the penitentiary, and the cycle continues. One of the facilities that we toured as part of that was the Ice and Rec facility. And we haven't used the Ice and Rec facility for about 6 years. And it was a piece of city land that we were just sitting on. And the Glory House, who are working with people who are trying to turn their lives around, the Glory House, if you're not familiar, is a halfway house. I knew nothing about the Glory House before I got elected, but had a chance that someone said, hey, they really want to expand. They need a place for people who are working. They're working their program, whether it's chemical dependency, alcohol, mental health, whatever's going on in their lives. They're trying to turn their lives around, and they're successful, and they're working, and they're doing some great things. They've made mistakes, but they're trying to turn their lives around. They're trying to pay restitution. They're trying to reunite with their family, pay their child support, whatever's going on in their life and turn around. But they don't have enough space. So they wanted to do something, and they've since started calling it a three-quarters house. So you get out of the halfway house, where do you go? You have a criminal felony record. Landlords, it's not a protected class, so finding an apartment in Sioux Falls that is affordable is difficult to begin with, and then you add a criminal record. So the Glory House said, hey, we really like the land, but we can't get anyone at the city to talk to us. We can't, we want to sit on it, we don't know why. So being the good liberal that I am, I said, I'll find out what's going on. I'll start asking the questions why this hasn't moved forward. We've tried to do it in the past. The mayor hasn't wanted to be part of it. They haven't, nobody knew why, but it just kind of died. And the land grows more weeds, the building's falling in on itself. We built a beautiful new hockey facility. The folks at Shields have done a nice job supporting that. So getting a chance to really move forward with it was really tough. So went to the administration, said, hey, we're really interested in moving this forward. They said, go away, kid, you don't know what's going on. I like being called a kid, I was good with that. So didn't like being brushed off, that not knowing the answer, and so talked to Parks Department, tried to find out who was going on, talked to the mayor, oh yeah, we'll schedule something. Nothing got done. Finally, they sent me to the finance director. And I didn't know it at the time, being as naive as I am, that when you get sent to the finance director, that's a way of the mayor not having to kill it. It just gives it to the finance director to say, we don't have the money to do this, we don't want to do anything. So finally I said, all right, I talked to the city attorney, we talked to everybody, we put this together as much as we can, and I said, fine, it's time for the council to move forward. The Glory House needs to expand. They need the land. There's nowhere else in Sioux Falls where you'd want this. If you'd like a halfway house built in your neighborhood with convicted felons and people who are trying to turn their lives around, raise your hand, I'll take your number down and we'll build a new one in your neighborhood. And we understand, it's a difficult thing. But you also have to have access to jobs. They have to have access to public transportation, getting a chance to having all the right things in place. Where the ice and rec facility is, has access to all of those things. The other thing that it does, because this is going to be a 3-quarter house, they still need to have access to mental health services. They still need group therapy that they'll have as part of the planning of this facility. They have Narcotics Anonymous across the street. Or they just need a hand on the back that says, hey, I know you've had a tough week. We've spent a lot of time with counseling. We've done some things. You're doing a good job. It's tough today, but it's going to be better tomorrow. Or just that hand up of moving forward. So having all of those services in one place. So I brought a resolution together and figured we were in trouble, but all of a sudden it passed unanimously of the council that we wanted to do this here about 6 months ago. And so we argued a lot about, do we need to gift it? Do we need to sell it? Do we need to maximize profit? Does government need to be like a business? And I kept saying, no. We paid $100,000 for the facility with the ice equipment, the building that's now depreciated and it's falling in on itself. Let's not make the Glory House have to. Let's give them the land so that it's a chance for them to have some equity, to do the financing, to find the additional grant money that they need. They are looking at probably somewhere between $7 and $10 million investment they're going to make. They're going to be in the 70 housing units that they'll have to have, that they'll do. It won't be a Taj Mahal, but it's going to be a small room. It's going to give you a chance to continue to work your job, work your program, continue to move forward. Through the whole thing, we've now decided that we're going to sell the Glory House a certain amount of square feet, about $50,000 worth. And then we've split the property basically in half, and we moved some things around, but we finally had first reading this week. We've declared it surplus. We're able to move forward with it. Again, you've seen a little bit in the media. You'll see a lot more, but you'll have 70 people who are now going to have a chance over the course of the probably next 7 or 8 years it'll take to build this. And it's someplace the city can make a difference. Here, when the mayor did his State of the City address, he challenged us that meth and drugs and things are really becoming difficult in Sioux Falls. And we're seeing a lot more problem with drugs and people who aren't behaving themselves and being good neighbors, as he likes to say. But he challenged us, he said, as a council, tell me what to do. I don't know what else to do with the meth problem. Well, I do. We need to take care of people who need help. Whether it's the Glory House, it's moving them forward with those kind of projects. We've added 48 new police officers since 2010, since the mayor came into office, with these next 6 that we'll be adding this budget cycle. But protecting and keeping the public safe in Sioux Falls is important. But at the same time, we've got to take care of people too, so that they don't feel that they need to have to steal to survive. They need jobs that pay a living wage so that they get a chance to do that. We need to add money to community development to bring jobs to town that pay. We need to stop being a low-wage state. We need to stop being a low-wage. Because what does it do? It costs us all money in the long run. We have to build affordable housing. This wasn't in my notes, but we're building an affordable housing project over on, it's basically 10th Street and Sycamore. What we're doing is building units for sale that are $180,000 it's going to cost us. We're going to sell them somewhere between $130,000 and $40,000 to people to be able to buy a home and start building equity and getting a chance to be successful in Sioux Falls. Great program. A lot of federal money, Citibank's part of it, tax credits, there's every program you can put together. But when they were doing the groundbreaking, what they said to us, well, who's the typical person that would qualify for a $130,000, $140,000 house? Oh, a teacher. And I stopped, and I'm going, we have to subsidize housing for teachers because that's what we pay teachers in our community. It blows my mind of what we're trying to do and how we support. And that's just one example. It's not just teachers. It's a lot of people who are right out of college and getting a chance to do that. That's not the kind of town I want to live in. That's not the kind of thing that we need to do. I want to grab a couple of these things before you know it. I talk too much about the Glory House because I've been really proud of what they're doing, and I've been accused, who do you know on the board? Who do you know over there? How are you going to make money on it? And I'm going, I don't know anyone, but I know a good idea when I see it. And to actually have people think that I was profiting from it because I wanted to give it is how some people on the other side think. There must be a profit motive somewhere, and Starr's got to make money on this, or he's doing something. I'm like, no, I just don't want people breaking into my house. I don't want the people at the Bishop Dudley to reoffend. I don't want them sleeping in neighborhood garages around the Whittier neighborhood. You know, since the Bishop Dudley, we all have concerns, we do things, but the neighborhood people who live in that neighborhood are doing so much better. They don't find people living, sleeping in the backseat of their car or in the garage. So before I know it, I'll get too far on that. Talked about the archive building. One of the other places, as long as we're talking about money, was something that's happened in the last year that I wanted to spend a couple minutes ago. One of the things that I committed to when I ran for the council and got elected was that I would never force a public contract on employees that they didn't agree to. And as you know, labor laws in South Dakota, whether it's the school district, the city, the county, we can negotiate with our labor groups, but the bottom line is we can just enforce whatever contract as a city on them. And we did that to our city employees. Our fire rescue people came to an agreement with the city, got their raise, got a chance to get some things in their contract that made their working conditions better. They were able to come to an agreement and say, this is what we're going to do. We respect you. We want to support you. We can only give you a 1.5% increase. Our fire department, our police department, our AFSCME employees, said no, 1.5% is not good enough. We want some additional things that are better working conditions, some things that we want, and they were negotiating as part of the process. And what happened is the city said, no, here's our best and final offer, take it or leave it. So our police department and our officers who protect us every day said, you know what, we need to go to arbitration. We need to go to the state, we need to be able to work on that. Our city, our administration told them, if you do that, we're not going to give you the raises, and we're going to penalize you for not accepting that. You know, the contract runs out at the end of December, and if you don't sign by the end of December, you won't get your raise on January 1st. Well, this was still back in August and September, and it takes, the state pushed things through quickly. Both sides, the police department union said, hey, we're willing to give you all the information. They worked with the arbitrator. The arbitrator ruled in the city's behalf. Imagine that, surprise, the Department of Labor didn't side with labor, but it wasn't unexpected. But it was after, you know, it was into February and March before this got done. So by April, when we're ready to force them into signing this contract, first of all, I said, I'm not signing on to anything that forces labor to have to accept a contract that they don't agree to. There were things we could have done to, you know, we can't always do money. It's not always about money, but we can sure do the things. There are some things we can do to make the job better for the employees. Or at least they had some ideas and they could have brought them forward and we could have had a chance to discuss some of those things. So we forced a contract on them, and at the same time I said, all right, they should get back paid to January 1st when the contract expired. It was $200 an employee, $250 an employee, but it's our way of saying thank you for what you do when you put your life on the line every day when you go out as a public servant, is that we can give you the money that we gave other employees who signed contracts. Why can't we give you your money back to January? And the mayor said, well, that wouldn't teach them a lesson. Or, you know, they need to learn that they should have just agreed to the contract that we tried to force on them. That's not who I am, and that's not how we support our public employees who do that. And a lot of that made the newspaper, but not a lot. And it's one of those things that over the course of this last year that probably offended me more than anything we've done as a council. And then my fellow council members didn't stand up to do the right thing. And like I said, the money was budgeted. So it wasn't like we had to come up with the money someplace else. And who knows where that money is now just absorbed into the budget for who knows what. But the police department's not happy about it. I tell you what, and it's not how we should treat public employees by any course of the matter. I'm going to touch on the ambulance stuff because that has been in the newspaper a lot. And I start this every time I talk about ambulance things with people, is talking about, we've got great ambulance crews on the street, what there are of them. My complaint isn't the service that you get from the crews that are working on the street. What we're doing is we don't have enough ambulances on the street. We can argue about contracts and we can argue numbers, that's what we do a lot. We spend a lot of time saying 93.7% of the time the ambulance is on time and they're coming in the right place and they're doing the things. Our contract that we negotiated with our ambulance provider doesn't allow us to say 3 ambulances aren't enough for a city of Sioux Falls during a shift, or 4, or sometimes 5. We have 12 full-time, fully staffed fire rescue crews who respond to priority 1 and priority 2 ambulance calls on the street. As a city, we think it takes 12 units to cover that. How do we think 4 is going to provide enough? It's not. And again, I'll say it over and over again, the people who work on those crews, I respect them. They do a great job. They've spent a lot of time to be trained. They're professionals. They do a good job. They're spread too thin because we've hired a for-profit ambulance company who comes to town to maximize profit. My business, that's what I do. I take care of my customers, but the bottom line is I have the toughest sales manager in the world. I sleep next to her every night. She keeps me on the straight and narrow to make sure that I'm, out selling and doing what I'm supposed to do in my job. But we would never consider privatizing the fire department. We'd never consider privatizing the police department. We've tried it with prisons, and you've seen the success of that around the country. You add the profit rather than service motivation to the whole thing. It's uncomfortable. The other thing that our contract requires with the ambulance provider is that they have mutual aid agreements. So a plane crashes, God forbid, or there are just times where there's a lot going on that there are several things, or tornado hits. This ambulance provider has decided that they would have a mutual aid agreement with Del Rapids and Humboldt. How do you drive from Del Rapids to save someone in the city of Sioux Falls? Well, their contract that requires that they have one. The contract says, and they've kind of hidden this, the contract says that they have to have mutual aid agreements. So the city attorney decided that mutual aid agreements means 1. But they have 2, so they're doing twice as good as they should do. It doesn't make sense. And we continue when we get to that, whether we call it priority 1 or level 0 or whatever paging, we end up dispatching a phantom ambulance because we don't have enough ambulances. And we've said, well, that's a code so that the ambulances that are on duty know they better hurry and whatever they're doing, finish that up because someone is dying in a car accident and they need to get there, or is having a car accident. And so we have to wait on lower priority calls to even call for mutual aid. We have a 10-minute, can you respond in the next 10 minutes to call for an ambulance in Brandon to come and save someone? So we're waiting 10 minutes or possibly. So as an ambulance crew, you're helping someone, you're loading them up, you're trying to take them to the hospital, you're finishing a transfer, you're doing whatever. You have to estimate when you're going to be available for the next call, someone having a heart attack. Well, I'll be ready in the next, we can be there in the next 10 minutes. So then they wait for that 10 minutes and it passes and they go, we're not gonna make it, it might be 12 or 13, so let's call for mutual aid. And so MedStar will come. Or, God forbid, Del Rapids, who they have the mutual aid agreement with, will come and drive a half an hour from Del Rapids. Del Rapids has 1 ambulance. So we, in the city of Sioux Falls, at our size, we have an ambulance come from Del Rapids, and now we've left this small town community without an ambulance crew. They may be able to patch somebody together and put mutual aid together from some other location, some other small town. Someone in Minnesota will come over. I know the county has some agreements. The bottom line, we respond to a lot of ambulance calls. We do a lot of good. Well, we got to do something different. We've got to have a stronger ambulance contract that requires them to have more units on the street. And it's strictly a money thing. And I'll get in trouble for saying that, and I'm on film, on tape saying it, and I'm glad to say it. We don't have enough ambulances on the street. We can play all the games, we can juggle the balls. I used the analogy of knives the other day that were juggling knives that we get to all the calls on time. And most of the time we do. But it's not going to be long. There's 20 to 25 people per month that aren't getting served in a timely manner in the amount of time. Now that might only be 2 or 3% or 5%. But if it's my family, or you heard me earlier, you know how I feel about my family or my neighbors, we've got to do a better job. The other thing, other quick analogy with that, the people who run the water department is a good friend of mine. His name's Greg Anderson, that runs the water that you get to drink, and safe, clean water that you get. He goes, Pat, we don't get to be 99%. You know, if we send bad water out, people are going to get sick and people are going to die. We don't get a 99% day. We shouldn't get a 99% day when it comes to ambulance services. You know, and being happy at 90% isn't what it takes to, I don't think that's what we would expect as a community in Sioux Falls. So, I want to do questions. Otherwise, I'll talk about 10 different things. So, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
The split rock addition.
Didn't you notice I avoided annexation questions as part of that? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Well, I tutored a lot of students from that area, and basically I think that's Brandon School District. I'm not even clear what the basic boundaries are, but I'm not really the politics of where that situation is.
Well, let me start at the beginning, because I always tell long stories, so that's kind of how we started. A couple months ago, as a council, we had some forced annexations. Or prior to that, the mayor's decided that we need to, there are islands. There's a business along Arrowhead Parkway on the east side of town, Burns Auto. They're into town. Everything around them is annexed. So we're trying to put sidewalks through, we're redoing Arrowhead Parkway with an overlay and streets. So there are these islands all around town that are different sizes and things. So there were a couple of forced annexations that were brought to us, not Burns, but a couple of other ones. There was a church and a single individual, Mr. Metzger, with his property that all around him are. So the council said, no, we're not moving forward. If you want to be part of the city, we want you to come willingly. We're not going to force you. There were some, if the city sends you a legal notice, I only have to have proof that I sent it to you. We don't have to have proof that you received it. And so there was some heartache about that. How do we know that you received the notice that we sent out to people? There should be some kind of return receipt that goes as part of that. So anyway, we voted these down. Director Mike Cooper, who is in charge of planning and zoning, said, all right, I throw my hands up. What are you guys going to do? There's 4 new members on the council. Where are we going to move forward? Who's going to, what are you guys going to do with forced annexation? Let's put a group of you together, a couple of citizens, and try to move forward and say, where are we going? And let's teach you about annexation, because zoning's complicated and you're new to the council. So we put the group together, and Councilor Staley, bless her heart, did a great job of going out and handing out flyers, and before you know it, a couple hundred people said, you're not annexing my land. And we said, well, we're not planning, at least with this group, of annexing anybody. And I wanted to be on that group. Glad now that I wasn't, but it has been interesting. So when it comes specifically to Split Rock, there isn't a plan to annex them at this point. There isn't a plan to annex anyone at this point. What we're trying to do is gather information to understand the process. But there are a number of neighborhoods around. Old Orchard's one that always stands out to me. They don't have sidewalks. They're in the city of Sioux Falls. They've worked out drainage. We were able to do some of those things. I think with Split Rock, eventually, we'll be able to work out some of those problems and questions. And yeah, we're not going to come in and tear out mature trees and make you do sidewalks and do sewer right away and water. At some point, when it becomes an issue and the people who live in that area want that, I think that's something we can work together. The other quick thing with that, sorry, I'll get you, Jim. The other quick thing is that maybe we need to look at some ways to make it affordable. Charging someone $200,000 on a property that's worth $200,000 and saying, well, we'll finance it for you for 20 years. I'll go to Chuck Brennan for some of those terms by the time we're done. So go ahead, Jim.
I just have a couple, I think, hopefully short questions.
Long answers.
Before I start, I'd just like to make the observation, and I want to thank Bruce and SouthDacola for presenting city
great job.
business. Let's call it unfiltered city business. Anyway, I'd just like to say, why does the city council personalize everything? I mean, it's like, I've got a good idea about doing something. Well, it hasn't been done in the last 30 years, and by God, this is a personal insult to me if you're going to do something that I've been doing. And I just have two. One is the parks. Why not choose people from various around the city? The second one would be the audit committee. I thought it was surreal. I mean, you just guys, when I say you, you're on the council, but I think you voted against it. You've been awarding this a contract. The personnel from the city gets up and says, I don't know how much, if we open this up to bidding, I don't know how much it would, no information, no nothing, but this is the way it's always been done, so we're going to have Bailey do the audit again. It's always been a 3-year promise, and so we're not even going to go to 1 year and have open bidding on it. It just seems like it's nuts. And if you say, wouldn't it be better if we did it this way, and wouldn't we save money? Everyone gets their back up and they say, well, you're insulting me. And it's not bad at all.
No, those are really great points. I thought you'd have more, because I have several more than I had to admit. The audit thing, it just shocked me. There's even more backstory than what you saw publicly. We started sending emails around asking if we could just go ahead with the contract. We weren't even going to talk about it publicly. The only reason that it got put on the agenda is there were a couple of us that threatened an open meetings violation, that they were trying to move this forward by secret emails that we were sending amongst ourselves. And of course, that's not a problem, but it was as soon as we pointed it out to them, and all of a sudden it became. Professional services, like an audit, even if we do an RFP, we can still give it to the same group that we've been giving it to for the last 10 or 11 years. There was no reason we couldn't send out. It would slow the process down, was part of the argument. And the bottom line, business conditions changed in the last 5 years since we sent this out for RFPs. So let's find out what's out there. And if there isn't a problem, then we can stick with the same audit group. But let's at least allow people to get a chance to know that it's available to bid on and be part of it. It didn't make sense. What was the other one?
The parks.
The Parks Board. Was it 3 months ago that we were trying to say, why don't we record the Parks Board meeting? Mr. Danielson can throw up a $50 camera, and by the time I get home, he's going to have it online and point out all the stupid stuff I say. And I'm good with that, because I say a lot of stupid stuff by the time I'm done. But I say an occasional good thing or two by the time we're done. Now I just challenge you, you better have it up online before I get home. But the bottom line is staff, and we have a lot of these meetings in places that already have cameras on the wall. The REMSA board meets in a place where they just have to make one keystroke, and the meeting's recorded, and a couple more keystrokes, it can be online. And then as a public, we can go watch the parts we're interested in. I watched the Planning Commission last night talking about 6th and Bonson. I'm not getting into that, at least not at this point. We're going to talk to them again next week. But why wouldn't we record park board meetings? So that if there's something in your neighborhood, you work, you have something going on, you're not able to go to the meeting, why wouldn't you want to be able to have access to that information? And thank goodness that there are people like Mr. Danielson who put that online. And there's been things that have been disappearing from our city YouTube channel, but they're on his site. They don't get to be erased and gone away and disappeared anymore. The technology that we have is unbelievable, and it's cheap. It costs nothing to put it on a YouTube channel, and it costs very little to have a staff person come and tape and record some of these things.
And I was thinking more along the lines of why not have a geographic distribution of people in parks?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing that it makes sense. There's no one from the Northeast that's been on the park board. I don't know how far back, but I drive by different things on my way to work and my way to different activities. You get a chance to see different things as part of the community. So Melanie, did you want, I saw your hand first. And then...
I have two different things, but I think the solution would be the same. I think it's time that there got to be some common ground, non-polarized, well, they're this or they're that, around two issues that I see that I care about. There are 6 persons, 3 couples at 29th and 1st taking care of the family across the street who are getting elderly and unable to take care of themselves. Pearsons are one, they're on vacation. Blisses are one, we're going on vacation, and a young union electrician. These folks are at the point that they have to call the ambulance. When they fall, they can't get each other up. They don't call us in the middle of the night, but the ambulance has been coming lots and lots and lots. Has everybody concerned? We are concerned because 2 out of 3 couples, most of the time, are there. The young people that come and do this work for the city do not know how to get the wheelchair that is folded up on the side of the wall of the ambulance out and set up. The gentleman refuses to go out in a gurney and be restricted. He wants to go in a wheelchair once they pick him up. Their level of competence and professionality with people that are concerned about the people that they're picking up leads customer service, relationships, and abilities. Do you need some mystery riders to ride along in the ambulances and rate this, or how do we do these things that are caring for the living people that work and live in our neighborhoods? My other 29th and 1st thing is we are in the center of monster houses. And damn, there's another one that is coming on Main in a giant deep hole, and it's between 29th and 28th on Main. Giant deep hole, and the whole house goes out to the edges. There's hardly any space. What if my grandchild was playing in that house and a fire truck had to come? How would they get to save the children? Is there no common sense at all? You call them, you complain, and they say, well, we only answer complaints. They only ignore complaints. They don't answer them. And now there's another house, the symphony conductor calls it the White Obese Bride, 29th and Phillips. It fills up every inch. The one diagonal from me at 29th and 1st, the roof is so big, it dwarfs all the other houses in the neighborhood. One block up, now in what's called Joe Gross's old house, beautiful old Tudor house, has got a garage added onto it that is bigger than the house. Okay, now I live at 29th and 1st. It's an old neighborhood. It's got big houses, little houses, character. We tried to be a historical district. And another neighbor blocked that by saying it was taking away his Second Amendment rights. So we don't have historical neighborhood. And okay, you need a way for people to talk to the council without them immediately saying, oh, well, you're just partisan, or you're just this, or you're just that. You get away from that and into concerns.
No, you're exactly right, because that's we make it really intimidating to address and come to us. Come to a council meeting and do 5 minutes during public input and feel the pressure that you get. Jeff did that a couple of weeks ago.
I enjoyed it, by the way.
You should come more often. I enjoy that. I enjoy that. I think that's part of my job. Ambulance thing before I move on, but the hardest thing about the ambulance crew, you know what the ambulance crew makes? They're $12 an hour employees. They were telling us how great, because they've moved them up to like $13.25, or I'm trying to remember the number, so they're under $14 an hour. How you raise and feed a family and do that on that type of, again, that's why you go for a for-profit company. I got one more quick thing and I'll come back. Raise a family and feed a family. That's why you hire a for-profit, out-of-town Texas corporation to come in and run our ambulance services. Because you can do it cheap and make a lot of money. It's a $12 to $15 million a year contract that people spend on fees for ambulances in Sioux Falls. How much of that goes back into the community? Well, $14 an hour worth of the crew that are taking care of our loved ones and the type of thing. Again, it's not, yeah, I don't want to beat on that part of it. I'm not sure where the answer is on making it less intimidating dealing with the city hall and city council. But it's something we definitely need to take a look at, that you're respected and treated with a little bit of respect when you do complaints. So, Mr. Danielson.
First off, I want to say thank you for giving Scott and I a plug. We do what we do because we firmly believe that everybody in this town has an equal right to information. The city of Sioux Falls has bought and paid for every one of those videos and all of those historical records that they are now destroying because it's not in the image of certain individuals. And so I right now have put up over 1,500 and I have another 1,200 videos to get it up on YouTube. And every one of the videos that I've put up, if it's possible to have a transcript, you can actually go out and search the transcript for whatever you're looking for. And YouTube does that for free. It's just my time to be involved in it, and the city of Sioux Falls should be doing that. And I really need to have the city council understand that, and as we go into this next election season, we need to find more people that are asking the questions that all of you people ask. The other side of it is, Pat has done, this is a plug for Pat, I hope, that he has worked very hard. I've been following the ambulance situation in Sioux Falls for actually a few decades and really closely the last 3 years. We've been trying to figure out why there's so much foolishness going on and why the ambulance service has degraded to such a level. I have family members who need the ambulance service, and it's a disappointment when we have employees who are trying to do a good job, can't do a good job, and are being blamed for the terrible management that's gone on. The Phantom Ambulance thing came about in a situation where even on Tuesday, one particular call had two 980 calls. It was a 980 and a 981. And I hope if you want, we can explain this in more detail, but Pat and Teresa Staley are working hard to give you guys an ambulance service that we deserve. So thank you, Pat.
Well, I'll pay you afterwards. That's awesome. I'll bring you with everywhere. I think we got time, Thompson, for one more. So,
Are you not negotiating, didn't the ambulance service just ask for a raise?
yeah, good point. This is what's interesting. We negotiated, the city, I keep saying we, the city negotiated a 5-year ambulance agreement. As part of that agreement, it regulates response times and just everything. It's 714 pages, I believe. I know it's more than 700 pages by the time the lawyers, I think we paid by the pound for the consultants and the lawyers for the agreement. But what that agreement says is that every year, or annually, I'm sure it says, that they are entitled to a cost of living increase, which is either the medical cost of living, medical, or 3%, whichever is higher. So what we've done is we have to give them a rate increase of 3% every year, because I think it's less than 2% is the medical inflation rate. Damn Obamacare, you know, medical costs are going up less than 2% this last year, but that's a whole other story we'll get into. But when the history that I've looked at of and talking to people about the ambulance contract, what happened is the edict came down from on high that there would be no city money put in to supplement the ambulance service when they negotiated the contract. So that automatically puts our negotiators behind the 8 ball of what they're asking for. So the health department's main concern when they negotiated this contract wasn't giving everything to the for-profit company, as long as they didn't ask for $100,000 a year or $500,000 a year or their consultant was telling them, if you don't put this in the contract and let them have these type of agreements and this kind of response time, we're gonna have to put $1 million a year to supplement the ambulance service that goes with it. So we had to give them whatever was more, the 3% or the CPI. So by the time it was said and done, they're getting their raise, but it's gonna be paid for by the taxpayers that use it. So, hey, it should be a user fee-based system, not something we share as a community, the cost of providing ambulances. The other thing that stands out in this, and that just really, I said a little bit about it at the beginning, and I'll say it again. We have 12 fire rescue units that are fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with 2 EMTs. Every firefighter in Sioux Falls is a trained EMT. And a third person on that crew is a paramedic. And that paramedic is fully trained and has multiple years of experience in service. So when fire rescue comes to your door, you know you have trained people who have a living wage that was negotiated for them by their union, and they were part of that. The other thing is the REMSA Medical Board, the Regional Emergency Medical Authority, Services Authority, get that S in there. What they did, the medical board has restricted the scope of practice of those paramedics who are on the fire rescue units. So if you're a paramedic in Del Rapids, you can intubate, start an IV, do life-saving measures. If you work for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue as a paramedic, you're not allowed to intubate patients. You're not allowed to start the IVs. You have to wait for the ambulance service to come. We've limited their scope of practice and what they can do. We train them. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on training paramedics and EMTs in the fire department. We spend millions having those guys available, 1 at each fire station and 2 at the downtown fire station. So there's 11 fire stations and a 12th one. So we spend all this money, but we don't let them do their jobs. And a lot of times what they've complained to me privately, because they're scared to do it publicly, but I told the new fire chief, and he knows it because he came from being a division chief, that one of his responsibilities was the fire rescue. So he knows what's going on. Those guys from fire rescue, and women, men and women, have to stand over you and watch you struggle while they call for ambulance services. And 96% of the time last month, that happened. So those 4% of the calls, you don't want to be part of that, because you're waiting. And I'm not happy with 94%. I'm not happy with 90% that the contract requires, especially now that I'm paying 6% more than I did 2 years ago.
I gotta ask the follow-up. What if some highly ethical person,
It's after 1 o'clock, sorry.
but what if a highly ethical person who's seeing a person struggling and waiting for the ambulance basically says, I'm gonna step in, I'm gonna do the right thing? What the hell are the consequences of that?
Yeah, they update their resume. But several of them.
You mean the city council would actually approve the firing of a person who was concerned about someone who is dying?
That would be an administrative action that would be done by the fire chief and human resources, and it would never come to the council. That's not part of our job. It's not a policy.
There's another side to that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that the fire rescue people will tell the families to load the injured person into the car and take them to the emergency room. Don't wait for the ambulance. So a lot of the times the ambulance will be called and then it's called off because the fire rescue has just personally told the family, just take them.
Don't do that. Do not take your loved one in your car and take them. The help's coming, it's there, you're gonna cause, it's not a good thing to do. But it's right, the problem is that an ethical healthcare professional is not gonna stand there when they have the ability to save your life. It's the same thing as they would stand there and watch your house burn down because you didn't pay your taxes or something. So that, it's not as severe and doesn't happen that often, but it happens often enough that I see it more with car accidents is what I hear fire rescue people saying that, hey, you've got a little neck injury, but you're cleared. It's not something that you should go on your own. But there are times where they've told people because they call repeatedly and ask, where are they? You can go to the scanners, you can go to Mr. Danielson's website and hear the fire department. You can hear Angela Kennedy's news report from a month ago where it's like, well, when are you coming? Or are you sending another ambulance? I got a text from a firefighter that's on a fire rescue crew that said the same thing. Hey, Pat, last night, we're calling for mutual aid. There's nobody coming. And part of it is, if you call for mutual aid, that's not a billable trip. And the problem is that Paramedics Plus is still on the hook for the call time. So they want to try to hold on as long as possible so that they at least don't have to pay the fine. Why can't we get rid of the fines and call for mutual aid and for the help that we need when we need it? Why do we feel that we need to fine them? I mean, there's got to be some penalties for not getting there on time. There should be a bigger penalty for not calling for help when you need it to get that ambulance coming from Del Rapids. Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna have to
Yeah,
wrap
I'll
up.
stay.
Pat said to stay around a few minutes, and Dave has the anti-corruption amendment petition, if you'd like to say.
Thank you. It's nice to have
Y'all come back now. Here.
Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.